Hello and welcome to the Basket Buds edition of the Athletic NBA Show. I'm Dave DeFore, filling in for Zach Harper, joined by Mo DeKeel and Jay King. We got a light crew this week, guys. Everybody's getting some kind of physical therapy done this morning. We've got old man Zach and old man Trey doing physical therapy, and I'm the fill-in. Sorry, guys.
You are heavy, Jay.
I am very heavy, way too heavy.
This was delayed, but I wanted to get that out there.
Jay, I'll tell you the secret to life, man. It's walking. All the things that they never connect the dots on in those blue zones in Japan, in the Mediterranean, in France. Why do they smoke and drink the way they do and live a long time? It's walking.
I think the secret to life for me is just don't order food at 3 a.m. after you finish work.
Well, why are you awake at 3 a.m.?
He's working.
Because I got to work.
Oh,
but now
fair.
it's the off season. I always lose like 30 pounds every off season. I'm ready, baby.
Okay, so
I come back in the best shape of my life every year.
You slim down for the summer and bulk up during the season. Is that that's what we're saying? Okay.
Not a healthy bulk.
Well, okay, so you were busy last week because Marcus Smart got traded, which was a little unexpected. I mean, this guy's like the heart and soul of that team, was certainly their identity for the last few years. And I would argue their toughness also. And this was a team we watched be a little soft in the playoffs. So, I mean, this is the first time we've had a chance to talk about it. Were you shocked that he was traded? I mean, he means so much, not only to the team, but also to Boston in general. I mean, Marcus Smart is a folk hero. And so to see him get traded, I mean, I never thought it would happen.
Yeah, and especially after the earlier in the day, Malcolm Brogdon was in that trade and Danilo Gallinari was in that trade. So it wasn't going to be something that touched the Celtics core at first, the first iteration of it. And that would have been a much safer trade, trading as good as Brogdon was this past year, the sixth man of the year, for a starting big man who can play 4, can play 5, can shoot the 3, can play in the post. Like that would have been a automatic move, especially without giving up any picks in the deal, which the Celtics were ready to do. Then it got switched to Smart. And from the Celtics perspective, of course, you get 2 picks and you get Kristaps Porzingis. That's great value. That's great value. Porzingis should fit them extremely well. He's going to give them super-sized lineups with tons of rim protection between him, Al Horford, and Robert Williams. They needed a big who could score. Al Horford used to be able to, not really anymore, especially inside the arc. And Robert Williams has never been a threat other than lobs and putbacks. So from that perspective, this makes him more dynamic in the front court. It gives him the chance to go from a team that was probably too small in the playoffs at times because of the rotation they used and because of the emphasis on guards that the roster had last year to now they're just jumbo. They're huge. And that's something that they were interested in and something they wanted to do. But it's at the cost of Marcus Smart. And how much does that impact your tough? It's beyond the toughness, too, to me, because you walk into practice, it was Marcus Smart's voice you heard.
It's spirit. It's not just toughness.
I think it's not toughness. It's spirit. We got to stop with this. I think he's kind of you can't be a tough guy and fucking flop all the goddamn time.
Yes,
I'm tired of us.
Kyle Lowry is tough as hell. Marcus.
No, I'm tired. I'm tired of this. He's not the toughest guy on that team. They lost to the Heat. He is the toughest guy on the team, and that's the problem. They lost to the Heat because they weren't tough. That was the reason why I picked the Heat in that series. In that sense, like I get it. The value of losing Smart is in the sense of like who's going to pass the ball. You know, and I don't think, here's the thing, the Porzingis move makes sense. I don't think it's a great move for them. I don't think he actually, my problems with this team is they shoot way too many threes. So they got another dude that's going to bomb from 3. I think the whole idea of him in the post, a lot of it is, hey, I have a smaller guy on me off a mismatch and I'm just going to shoot the jumper. That's really kind of what we're talking about with him in the post.
But that's what they need him for, right? Because they need to counteract switching defense. And that's why they did it, because they didn't have someone who could beat a switch before.
But they're not going to get to a lot of those things. Like, I don't think so. And they're going to I think he's going to end up shooting way more threes than even before, because this is the DNA of this Celtics team is we jack up a ton of threes. And then in the other part that hurts in losing Smart, though, is who's going to pass the ball? Smart was their best passer, and I don't even think that was great. But like Jay, like who's taking over in that kind of connector role and going to kind of help them out?
Yeah, the organization believes that Derek White can handle more of those responsibilities than he had in the past, and they believe it. I mean, there were times last year when they handed him the reins and it looked great. Milwaukee, around February, every starter was out. Derek White played a full strength Milwaukee team basically by himself, had 27 points, 12 assists, and looked awesome. Miami, Jason Tatum gets hurt. Jaylen Brown is struggling. Derek White is the one who took the reins and almost brought them to within at least shouting distance for a little while. And so they think with the ball more often that he can be the one. And then the other part of this that has been obvious to anyone watching is Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown just need to play better. It didn't matter who they were going to bring back. They lost to the Warriors 2 years ago in the finals because Stephen Curry was so far beyond Jason Tatum in that series. They lost to the Heat this year largely because Jaylen Brown turned the ball over a ton, did not have an efficient series. And so there were always going to be a lot on those two guys. I think this puts even more on those two guys. This is a way to reset the roster in a way that will fit Jason Tatum as he becomes more of a point guard type. And I think this is a bet on him taking that step and being the primary initiator more often. And when they did that with Smart, there were spacing issues, right? Because you had Derek White and Marcus Smart, right. And Derek White became a shooter last year, but teams aren't super afraid of him for sure. And Marcus Smart was another guy you could leave. So now they have one fewer guy to leave. They have Kristaps Porzingis, who's a foot taller than Marcus Smart. So they're going to be playing much bigger, and he'll probably play in a lot of the same lineup combinations that Smart did. They believe Peyton Pritchard is capable of playing minutes, even though he didn't last year, and that they'll be fine with a guard rotation of Brogdon, White, and Pritchard. But I think really this doesn't work unless Tatum and Brown are better. And nothing would work unless Tatum and Brown were better. And yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask this question. Are the Celtics done? Like, I'm sorry, if part of your rotation, and Pritchard's good, but if part of your rotation is Pritchard in that area, like I don't see that being a thing that takes you over the top.
Very
like this
aspirational come playoff time.
A lot of this sounds aspirational. We're hoping Derek White can do this because he did it in 2 games in the regular season,
but it's not just 2 games. I mean,
I believe in Derek White.
Derek White's really good, but he's not a connector. He's not a dude that you're going to look at going like, hey, bing, bing, I'm going to get the guys in the right spot and all of those things. It doesn't even have to be a great dude. It's a dude like Ricky Rubio or somebody that does, you know what I mean? Like almost in that sense is kind of what the Celtics are missing. That's all I want the Celtics to get, Jay. It's just somebody like Ricky Rubio, just somebody simple
get Alex
like that.
Caruso.
Bring Rondo out of retirement.
I mean, right. Shit, we might have to, but like we need something like that. It's just too much. It always will end up in just one-on-one stuff with them. And that's the Celtics need a whole change in offensive philosophy, not just in just the personnel, but they need a change in offensive philosophy and what shots they're trying to get, how they're trying to get them.
Do you think it's possible? And I ask you because you're a basketball mastermind. Do you think it's possible that
end the podcast right there?
Well, I'm assuming he's talking to me here, Mo. I mean,
do you think it's possible that, like, the one way to muck up the Celtics offense the last couple years was have a really good switching defense, and to have like the Miami zone has given them fits. Is it possible that having Kristaps could deter people from switching because he could punish those switches? And if you do that,
but he can't.
Then all of a sudden Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are seeing different coverages, and they're much more comfortable against those coverages than they are against switches.
No, I mean, like
punish the switch though.
It depends on who you're playing.
I mean, he was one of the most efficient post-up players in the league last year because he was punishing switches.
I mean, like it depends on who you're playing though, right? Like, yeah, if he has a real small guard switching onto him, yeah, they're not going to be able to. He's going to be able to punish that. You have Jimmy Butler switching onto him. I don't know if he's really going to punish it that much. And I think the other aspect of it with Porzingis, who was freaking awesome last year, 23 and 8, I think were his averages and all that stuff. Like, how real is that? Is that something that's going to continue? The dude's been injury prone in a lot of
Yeah,
spots. And that's like, I mean, that's that's the real question, is how real was that season last year? Is that something that's going to carry over? Like, I think sometimes we think, oh, guy had a good last year, he's ready to do it again next year. It's not always how that kind of works. I get what you're saying, the switching, and this guy will solve that. My concern is he's going to float mostly on around the 3-point line and the perimeter more than actually kind of get down there. And again, I think a lot of his post ups were at the elbow, at the free throw line, and I'm just going to shoot over my guy. It's not like he's bang, bang, bang down low in the post, forcing a double and kicking out and things like that. And even his passing isn't that good. So it's like I have a lot of questions in terms of that fit. I do think it was for what they got for Smart, and I think we kind of got to get back to Smart here. They got great value. 2 first-round picks and Porzingis out of that. That's awesome for them. Like that makes, like, you make that deal, I think.
Well, and the other thing is the place where Porzingis immediately, I think you can say, oh, he makes a difference, is defensively, because his rim protection, along with Rob Williams, or if he's playing with Al Horford, like they can mix those lineups up, and it's going to allow Porzingis to be free as a helper and floating around blocking shots. I think that is immediate. The offensive stuff, I agree with Mo. I think he does, when he's got a primary creator. I mean, if you just look at the years in Dallas, he does tend to float around the 3-point line, settling for threes, even on a switch. I mean, small guards give him trouble in the post. Like, this is just
they used to. I'm not sure that's so much the case anymore.
I think he had
but they definitely used
year
to.
Right. I think he had a good shooting year, right? Like around the basket, especially against smaller guys. That's what you want from him. Like, he needs to play more like that. But one of the issues with Porzingis in his career has been that he hasn't been able to do that. Now, let's talk about Smart in Memphis, because I think that that actually is one of the more interesting angles here. And I know you don't cover the Grizzlies, but you know that team. And in particular, you know Dillon Brooks. That's your guy. And Marcus Smart is upgraded Dillon Brooks from an attitude perspective. They're about the same guy shooting the ball. He's a much better passer. He's a better defender. But the Grizzlies needed to replace that attitude that Dillon Brooks kind of faked. And Marcus Smart has that for real. What is he going to give the Grizzlies? I mean, like I made a joke.
I don't think Dillon Brooks faked the attitude.
He's always been a Grizzly. Marcus Smart has always been a Grizzly. But yeah, now he's in Memphis.
It's a great fit. That is an awesome fit, because he gives you all the strengths that Dillon Brooks did. And then he's such a better passer. He's so much better at seeing the game offensively. He's going to help. Like, they're awesome in transition. They are awesome. He's going to help that. He's going to be looking ahead. He's going to find guys for wide open layups that they just haven't had in the past. He's going to just complement them so well. He can run the offense while Ja Morant is gone. He can play alongside Ja. He can play the 3 if you want him to, next to Desmond Bane, because he's strong and has the 6'9", 6'10" wingspan and can guard basically anyone. You put him next to Jaren Jackson, that's just a great duo. And there's a lot of tough guys in Memphis. It's not just those two. It's that you can switch and you can have size everywhere. And Tillman, Steven Adams, like, they just have a lot of big, strong dudes, and Marcus Smart's another. I think that's a absolutely great acquisition for the Grizzlies, and he's gonna. I think as good as he is defensively, the biggest help he's going to bring them is in half-court offense, because of the way he organizes pieces, because of the way he's a connector, because of the way he can pass the ball. All that stuff that Dillon Brooks never gave them and never could give them, because that's not what he does. I just think people are looking at it in some ways like they just replaced Dillon Brooks with another non-shooting guard. And it's like, yeah, but this non-shooting guard does everything else for your offense. And that's going to be a big deal.
He's a much better player than Dillon Brooks.
Yeah, like, I don't think that's just don't tell the whole story, by the way. Like, I mean, Marcus Smart, I trust Marcus Smart to take shots. I just trust him.
I trust him to catch and shoot shots. I'll put it that way. The questions, I think I think Marcus Smart, for everything Jay said, is right on, in that this will help them, especially on the defensive end. But more importantly, I think just having another adult in the room matters, right? Just having another dude. We've seen this coming from this team for a while. It's been the immaturity. And some of it's been from Dillon Brooks, but some of it's from Jod. Some of it's just across the board from everybody. We kind of want to see them have another adult. I think having, and this is kind of weird to say because I never would have thought I'd say this about Marcus Smart, but another stabilizing force in the locker room is going to go a long way for this team. I love it for Memphis. I do got to say though, Jay, I don't think it helps the half court all that much in the sense
Yeah.
of if it's this is where it scares me. Ja, Smart, and Adams on the floor at the same time. That's 3 non-shooters. And I know they can create stuff. I know they could do stuff out of that and everything. That's still 3 non-shooters, and we know how it is in the game these days.
We've seen Adams deep in the playoffs become less of a factor. And so I think they need to find ways to play without Adams on the court.
But they're
and to me,
and Smart
to me, I agree. Half-court offense, they're not going to be a great half-court offense team. That's 100% certain. I just think with Ja and with Smart, you have a level of intelligence, and they can both read the game. They can both diagnose a defense. They can both just think the game. And they had none of that with Dillon Brooks. Dillon Brooks was like the exact opposite of that.
Oh,
and so I don't think Smart, like the perfect acquisition for Memphis would have been a big wing who could shoot and score and defend, right? Like that would have been probably perfect for them. Smart's a little smaller, I think, than ideal. He's not as good a scorer as they ideally would have gotten, but he's going to help them in so many ways. And I think you're right about the maturity component. The other aspect is he'll never be afraid to confront the BS.
Yeah.
Like guys who need to hear something, he's going to pipe up and say it. When things are wrong, he's going to be the one. And I think that could be difficult for an organization to handle at times because he is willing to speak up and he is willing to call out stuff, but it's also what the Grizzlies need and pretty clearly what they need.
100%.
And
an adult in the room who can walk in and command some respect, right? That's the thing. Marcus Smart's going to walk in. He's got that resume. And he has that reputation. I love the move for Memphis because, like, one of the things, it was too many kids. It was a bunch of kids and Steven Adams.
Yep.
And you need more than one guy with a bunch of kids. I mean, especially with that much talent.
I mean, just the story of Adams telling guys like, hey, let's not go out every night on the road and things like that. Like, those are the kind of concerning deals with that stuff.
And Tyus Jones was really good. I think Tyus Jones is one of the best backup point guards in the league, probably the best backup point guard in the league.
Yeah.
He couldn't play next to Ja. Like that wasn't optimal for him. And Marcus Smart can, and he can play next to Desmond Bane. And those lineups
gives him more lineup options.
And
more feasible.
And Smart can play the backup role.
Right.
When you can mess around your rotation here a little bit and then have Smart kind of playing the backup point guard role as well for a certain amount of time. I love the move for Memphis. It made sense because I think, Jay, you're right. Like, preferably they'd like a bigger, longer wing and all of that stuff. Might not be available.
Yeah.
We know Masai Ujiri's like coveting OG Anunoby like he's a freaking the ring from Lord of the Rings, kind of deal. Like he's asking for a million things for that and stuff like that. I think it was a good move for Memphis.
Yeah, it was a great move, perfect fit. I want to talk about another guy that the Wizards dealt. And this was a weird one.
It's so weird saying the Wizards dealt him.
I know, because like they just held on to him for like a couple of days. But
does he get a jersey?
Chris Paul is a Warrior. That is weird, guys. This is like we're in the multiverse. And Chris Paul is a Warrior. He's gonna back up Steph Curry. Does this mean Steph Curry won? No. I mean, all the championships mean Steph Curry won, but Chris Paul's going to be the backup point guard there. I mean, they trade Jordan Poole for Chris Paul. Just right off the face, is that an upgrade?
I think this works for the Warriors. I mean, I think just if you can get Chris Paul to play about 25 minutes a game, that's a massive upgrade over Jordan Poole. You get him running the second unit, just think about the opportunities Clay's going to have instead of him coming off screens and Jordan Poole dribbling 4 more times and then, Clay doing one of those things where he throws his hands up and out of frustration and things like that. I think CP in that second unit's really going to open up opportunities for them. I don't know. He'll play a little bit with Curry, but I don't think that's going to be the main deal for them. Like, he's not. I'll be shocked if he's starting. I think Steve Kerr will be hitting the sauce a little too hard if that's the case. I think the situation is like, this is a perfect backup for them. And it's an upgrade over Poole by miles. The immaturity that you had from Poole and everything that they were getting out of that. I think adding Chris Paul to this mix actually works. I know it's weird. It's so awkward. It took me a few days to just even get over the fact Chris Paul's a Warrior now after all those years with the Clippers in Houston, that it's like odd, but this one, I think this really might work.
The another team that needed maturity, and that sounds weird to say because it's the Warriors, but that second unit was just totally out of sorts last year. Jordan Poole, you can blame the punch, you can blame all the locker room stuff behind the scenes, but on the court, the product that he put out there last year was haphazard. It was
bad.
It was loose. It was just gross. And so they knew that either they had to repair whatever issues they had between Draymond Green and Jordan Poole and the whole locker room, because that whole team was pissed at Jordan Poole last year.
Yeah.
Steph got ejected from a game because he was bad at a shot Jordan Poole took. Like, there were multiple instances where guys who don't lose their cool, especially Steph, lost it because of the way Jordan Poole was playing, the brand of basketball that he was playing. And so they needed to address that. And it could have been by just having Jordan Poole come back with a new mindset, but obviously they decided that wasn't enough. And I think for them, Paul gives them a chance to have, like, their biggest weakness over the years has always been that Steph Curry, when he's off the court, they crater. And Paul gives them a chance to avoid that. And he gives them a chance to just, like, they're not going to play the same style, obviously, when Curry is sitting. They kind of tried to play the same style with Jordan Poole on the court the last couple of years. But I think that's going to have to be like Chris Paul run minutes when he's on the bench. And it's going to be totally different than the free-flowing style they're used to. It's going to be far more slow it down, run pick and rolls, like,
well, this is
organize things like Chris Paul does. Yeah,
they did try that pick and roll stuff with Poole early on, but it was Poole and Wiseman, right? Like, I want to give Poole a little bit of a break because I don't think he had a good pick and roll partner in those bench units. I just don't. And now, he was bad last year, but this is the question I've got about Chris Paul. Who is going to run pick and roll with Chris Paul? Is it going to be this rookie? I mean, what are they going to do? Because they are going to have to play different. Chris Paul is not Steph Curry. We all know this. What are they going to do with the bench? Is it just going to be, hey, Chris, go do your thing, 4 minutes here, 4 minutes there, and just create some offense for us? I mean, what do you guys think it's going to look like with Chris Paul in the court?
I don't think they have to change as much as Chris Paul has to change. I think Chris Paul's got to be, hey, I got to be the floor general. I got to operate for these guys. I got to find ways to get Clay shots when he's on the floor, get opportunities for, he's going to work with the young guys a lot with Kuminga and Moody. They're going to need those guys to kind of take another step in their development, which we know is not the Warriors' best foot forward in that sense. But I think there's going to be a lot of different things that they're going to do. The lineups are probably going to be different. I think there are going to be times where he's going to be on the floor with Kevon Looney in the second unit. And Looney could be a good pick and roll partner for him in that sense. But I don't think they're going to lean heavily on Chris doing the pick and roll. I think Chris has to learn to fit in more into their system, into what they're doing. And I think that's going to be the things that he's got to figure out in that sense. Listen, their biggest thing in that second unit, they got to get Clay shots and get Clay going. I think that's really the second unit's major thing. And from there, everything builds out. So Chris has got to be able to work that out. And I think that's going to be the big part for them in that sense. I won't be surprised if we just forget about just obviously the numbers will go down because of minutes, but like per minute basis or whatever, I won't be surprised to see if we see him run less pick and roll.
And also, this addresses one of their major weaknesses, which was last year when Steph didn't have the ball, they were in trouble. And that's partly because Poole just really crumbled after what was a pretty good year the season before.
Poole got Steph ejected from a game because he threw his mouthpiece because Poole wouldn't pass the ball on a play. Like, what? Yes, this is a definite upgrade.
Of course, but the other part that they didn't address is size and athleticism on the wing. And maybe they just think Kuminga will be ready, even though they weren't willing to play him in the playoffs, which is a red flag to how they see him. But they haven't addressed that. They need to find some way, because right now it's DiVincenzo, it's
and it's not going to be
Gary
DiVincenzo.
Payton, it's Chris Paul, it's Steph Curry.
They're not going to be able to keep DiVincenzo. Like, this is the issue that they're going to run up against. Is DiVincenzo is probably going to be too expensive for them to bring back. They need Moody to hit this year. They need Kuminga to hit, or they have to move him. You know, I mean, guys, I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but have you guys looked at this year's free agent class? It's not like there's a bunch of guys out there. And Golden State is not the ring chasing destination that it was. So you're not Jeff Green is in Denver and it's probably going to stay. Bruce Brown is going to be available, but he's going to make too much money for the Warriors. I just think their options are limited.
I think Jay, you're right in that this is what they still need to upgrade on the wing, need to improve along those lines. I just don't think this is the year where that's going to happen for a lot of teams. Every team that's going to need something, they're going to have to choose one or two things, and that's it. Like, I don't think this free agent class sucks.
Daryl Morey got Jalen McDaniels from the Hornets last year at the trade deadline for basically nothing. And I think that was a huge pickup for this year's free agency class. Like, that's where we're at.
Yeah, I just think it's just one of those years. It's like, fuck, man, like, what can we do? You know, we talked about it with Memphis. Memphis would have liked to get better on the wing as well. The options just aren't going to be there this year, especially on the wing. And I think that's going to be the hardest thing for a lot of teams. But for the moves that they just getting off of Poole's contract is huge for them. Say they flame out this year. Okay, cool. Chris Paul's contract next year is unguaranteed. Boom, he's gone. And then, you know, they're so far over the cap, I have no idea if it helps them. But it's still just kind of, it's better than having Poole for 4 more years at, what was it, like 30 million? Like, it's I think just getting off the contract was even a big win.
And he's going to score a lot of points next year. And I wouldn't be surprised if he puts it together far more, certainly, than he did this past season, and scores a lot of points and does it more efficiently, and with a team more catered to him and not Stephen Curry's team. We saw when Steph was out, he put up huge numbers, and he did it consistently when Steph was out, and they played okay when Steph was out. It wasn't like they totally were trash when Stephen Curry was injured. So I think it's possible that Washington is able to kind of redeem him and then flip him later in a classic like OKC type move with that new front office that has OKC ties.
I mean, look, is there a more perfect guy to captain your tank than Jordan Poole?
I mean,
he's going to be entertaining, right? Like he's probably going to have a 50-point game next year. Right?
I mean, yeah, and they'll probably lose that game.
He'll have a 4 for 25 game next year. But I think that's a great move for the Wizards.
Look, all right, so how do we feel about what the Wizards did?
You know, that's kind of the $1 million question, Mo, because everyone keeps saying they cleared the books, but they also got Jordan Poole, right? So you didn't exactly clear the books. It's a more tradable contract than the one you had in Bradley Beal, because there's not a no trade clause, and he makes less.
And he's
money.
young.
And he's young.
Yeah, makes less money. Yeah.
But I mean, I think they did okay. They got out of the Bradley Beal business. They got at least good swaps, because those late swaps with the Suns could be very valuable. But in the short term,
incredibly valuable.
in the short term, I think it's one of these things where you have to wait and see. What does this look like 2 years from now, 3 years from now? Because it's very obvious they're turning the page to tank at this point.
I just think.
What do you think, Mo? How did they do?
I think they did like just barely above okay. Listen, the Bradley Beal deal they were fucked.
Yeah, you're
right?
screwed.
The moment they did the no trade clause, they were screwed. There was nothing they could have possibly done in that instance that would have helped them. Right? Like just the no trade clause completely screwed them. I don't know, because Beal controlled so much of that. So that deal aside, like when people are talking about like the pick they get for Chris Paul, it's a top 20 protected in 2030. I don't know if that really matters. The swaps even don't matter with Phoenix. Those are fake first round picks. One of the swaps is next year, and that pick doesn't matter. Like, right. Washington's not going to be worse. I mean, Washington's going to be worse than Phoenix, most likely. So that's not even a pick that you got in the deal. Like, I think there's a lot of stuff in there. I mean, I think they did what they had to in this instance. And I think they just knew, hey, we got to eat it. We're just going to get killed here. And I think that's more something you don't see a lot from teams.
Rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, and I think they just said, we're just going to eat it, and we'll go from there.
I mean, again, you got out from the Bradley Beal contract, which, by the way, Bradley Beal's a good player. So you lost a good player, but you moved that contract, which was hamstringing you. The no trade, it is unbelievable to me that Bradley Beal has a no trade clause. And every single time I mention it really throws me off because he's the only guy that has one. Bradley Beal. And it really it messed with the Wizards big time. Sorry.
It's just hilarious.
It's just like
he's the only guy who has one. Bradley Beal.
Bradley Beal. But for Phoenix, Jay, like I actually think that this has been lost a little bit because Phoenix got a good player, another good player to go with two really good guys. So in the pecking order, like Bradley Beal is the third best player on the Suns. He might be the best third guy in the league. I mean, no doubt, maybe, right? Like he's the best number 3 in the whole league. But what I worry about with Phoenix is we just watched them struggle because they had no depth. And Landry Shamet as a depth piece is, Mo, please pardon me. I mean, look, he's a rotation guy. And you're in trouble when he's playing for you big minutes in the playoffs, but he's still a guy that was able to give them a lot of minutes in the playoffs. And so they give up 2 guys to get Bradley Beal, and that's fine. Like it's a better player, but you have so much money tied up. The tools at your disposal to bring in more guys are just so limited now. And I almost worry, Jay, are they too top heavy? Is Bradley Beal and Booker and Durant, like they're really good, but we know it takes more than 3 guys to win in the NBA. And especially out of those 3 guys, I mean, Booker's a 2-way guy, but can Booker survive? Like, can you survive in the playoffs with Booker being your primary initiator on offense and guarding the other team's best player if it's a guard? I don't know that you can. He looked gassed by the end of the Nuggets series. So I think they've got depth concerns.
It's okay.
They certainly have depth concerns.
And Jabari Parker are on the way, according to Chris Haynes in a free agent workout. Sorry, I had to jump in. I know you said it to Jay, but that's
Jabari.
Hey, do you have any analysis on Jabari?
Yeah. He seems like a great guy. Great guy.
Do they sure
he has anything left to give the Suns. They lack a lot of depth. The one thing I will say, they took 2 games off Denver, which nobody else did, by having the 2 incredible players. And now they added Bradley Beal. Chris Paul did not play. And that Chris Paul was hurt. Chris Paul, like it was just the 2 guys. Now you have a third who can do a lot of damage. So just from that, they should be better in the playoffs as long as those 3 are all healthy. Now you have to have them all healthy. If one of them is not, it's not going to work. And then the other piece, DeAndre Ayton, it was so funny when Chris Haynes reported they plan to keep DeAndre Ayton and his value. They believe his value is at an all-time high. Well, no, it's not. Because you know why?
You're keeping it.
Because you know why? Because he's still on the roster. And
right.
I think they would have very much liked to turn him into multiple players who could compete in the playoffs because they're going to have a lot of trouble building out a roster. We've talked about the bad free agent class, and they'll probably be a draw for guys who want a ring, but there just aren't many available who could potentially be difference makers. And they need like a whole roster of dudes. They need so many dudes. And I think it's possible the mix works just because the top end talent is so ridiculous. But I do wonder if there's too much of an overlap where all those guys are primarily scorers and you don't have enough toughness, defense, depth, everything. Like there are so many questions. I think
others.
Frank Vogel, he's a defensive minded head coach who has proven to be one of the better defensive coaches in the league whenever he's gotten a chance. And I think that's going to be really tested this year but Kevin Durant can really defend. Devin Booker didn't used to have the reputation, but he can really guard now too. And so I think it's not totally barren there defensively. It's just they have to surround those guys with guys who can survive in the playoffs. And it's tough to find those guys. It is harder than ever to survive in the playoffs because teams can attack you from 5 positions. There's so much shooting. There's so little space to hide for guys who aren't good enough.
And it's all about Denver too, right? Like you gotta think like all roads lead to Denver. How do you guard those guys? Mo, I mean, is this safe to say if they're keeping Ayton, next season is all about Ayton? They go as he goes?
No, I think it's still gonna come down to health, and they'll have to figure out what they're gonna do in that area. And it's like Jay was saying, okay, they keep Ayton. They have 4 players. Like we're in the same boat they were last year. Yes, Beal's a massive upgrade in that sense, that having 3 options that could probably, the 3 of them can combine for 90 in a game, with him, KD, and Booker. But like, it's going to come down to that 5th guy. It's going to come down to your rotation, your bench, how much are you going to wear guys out in 82 game season. It's going to wear these 4 dudes out. And Ayton, who you guys know, I don't really like him. I think is just one of those things, like they're going to need him to step up. But you know what's going to happen? The moment he steps up, they're going to flip him at the deadline for 3 other players. Like that's kind of their, that's really the thing they need to have happen. And as Jay was saying, the value is not high right now as much as they want to lie to us about it. And I think that's kind of the deal there. They need Ayton to kind of step up just to raise his value. So they can
30 points. Average 30,
been,
12 or something like that for the first half of the season.
You've been DeAndre hating for a long time. But so much of this trade to me comes down to, can Bradley Beal reach a different level than he's shown the past couple of years? I think it would have been so easy for him in Washington to just go on cruise control. He knew his team wasn't good enough. He knew no matter what he did, they weren't going to win a ton of games. They weren't going to be a playoff factor. They weren't going to do this and that. Now it's different. And I think it's possible this unlocks a Bradley Beal who defends. This unlocks a Bradley Beal who on a night-to-night basis is just operating at a higher level. And he's been great. He's been really good. 2 years ago, he was utterly ridiculous when he was averaging 30. But to me, it's like, can he buy in and defend every night because they're going to need him to do that? And is he okay with scoring 18 points a game, but still having more of an impact because he does all the other stuff? I don't know the answer to that yet, but I think it's entirely possible that he gets off cruise control and because of the situation, because of the players around him, because he finally has hope that we'll see a more committed Bradley Beal, especially on defense, where he's been really bad over some of the last few years.
Well, he won't have the scoring load, right? Which is nice because also there's no excuse to not defend. And he has been a decent defender in his career. I mean, the last 3 years, notwithstanding, I mean, he's been a better defender than he's shown the last few years. I think we should probably wrap up. But was there anything else, guys, from last week? We didn't touch on every single move. Obviously, we only touched on Marcus Smart and Chris Paul and now this Bradley Beal piece. But was there anything else last week that jumped out to you guys that Like, put a pin in it. This is important.
I'm really intrigued by Houston. It's not super important because
is it because Alperen Sengun is now 7 feet tall? Is that why you're interested?
I think he's 7'6", right? Everybody's growing. Cade Cunningham gained 60 pounds. LOL.
Kuminga's 7'2".
Yeah.
Everybody.
No, I just think they have a lot of young talent now, and I don't know if it meshes, but Cam Whitmore falling to where he did and picking up Thompson, who I think is just an awesome talent and will do a lot of the things that they need him to do with the passing and the defense and everything that he could bring. And then on top of that, they've got so much cap space. You bring in a mature, experienced guy to kind of bring young talent together, and a new coach in Ime Udoka. I'm intrigued by them. I think they're still too young.
Let me ask you, if you're San Antonio and Houston said you can have our whole roster for Victor Wembanyama.
Nope. Don't even finish your sentence. I'd hang up before they. But by the time they say click, like it's not even having that conversation. It's not even that. Jay, they're interesting, and we know they're going to get harder. Obviously, just kidding. But like that being the veteran guy, you're saying the thing
or Van Vliet or Brooke Lopez, like there are a number of guys.
Dylan Brooks.
Dylan Brooks. He would help too.
Sure, he would.
Are they trying to tank again? Or?
The thing to watch is just Dame in Miami and this constant flirting. And like, I just would really wish for Dame to just either demand a trade or shut up at this point. Like we're at the point it's getting ridiculous, and all of these things with music playing in the background and it's a coincidence and all of this stuff. And like it's I'm just going to keep an eye on that, because I think that's probably the most logical place. And I think that's a place where, hey, like that makes things a lot more interesting for the NBA. If Dame gets to Miami, I think that's something that could really happen and would work out. And he doesn't want to play with the young kids, man.
I mean, I will say at least people are going to watch Portland this year because Scoot is going to be must-watch TV, I think.
No, they're not. They're going to say they will, but they won't.
They won't be good enough. That's
Scoot's gonna be fun as hell, and that's not a shot at Scoot. It's a shot at you people. Y'all will say you watch it, but you don't.
I'll watch Scoot.
I think it's a shot at Jay King.
I'll watch Scoot. I'll be disgusted.
Actually, that's not true, because Jay King is the only guy watching basketball.
I have no question Jay King's watching them. I have Jay King, just so you guys understand, in the group chat will send messages of like
he's watching like the MEAC tournament,
like the most randomest things. Like 7th division in like Mongolia, and Jay has a take. Like Jay's watching all hoops.
That's true. It's true, including his own highlights. That's going to do it for the show.
Don't ever put those in. Don't put those in the group chat.
We missed Zach Harper. We missed Trey Edwards this week. For Mona Keel, for Jay King, I'm Dave DeFora. This has been the Basket Buds on the Athletic NBA Show.